Casper, great to be here at the Trump International Golf Club. Thanks a million for sitting down with me.
Thanks, Mark. Pleasure to be here.
Casper, I'd love to start with what I say is how you get into the wonderful world of hospitality, how you entered this great industry. It'd be great to hear your story.
Well, Mark, I grew up in Asia back in the 70s and 80s. And really, it was a time where there was a lot of entertainment, lots of corporate entertainment. My dad was also honorary consul of Denmark at the time. So I just remember growing up, there was parties at home all the time. And it was always catered by some five-star hotel. And, through that time, I was always curious about food. My mum was always bringing me into the kitchen. I was helping make dessert. And gradually it became like main courses and all that. And, one day I figured I see all these waiters and I can do that job. So I asked, is it all right if I join? So I helped out a little bit with the waiters from all these fancy five-star hotels. And as I became a teenager, I basically told my mom, look, why don't I do it for you? I'll help you with all the cooking and I'll do all the service, bartending, obviously to make extra pocket money. So that was really the beginning of having a sense of hospitality and service. We were also very privileged at the time. We traveled to many beautiful resorts around Asia, five-star stays. And I was always fascinated. I love the whole vibe. And I guess as I became a teenager, started looking at what career should I pursue, where was my passion, what would I be good at, and really hospitality was thrown out there at me. And I wasn't convinced hospitality was the way to go, but I went for interviews with a hotel school, and they sort of persuaded me, this is what you're going to do, because you're going to be involved in service, culinary, managing hotels, restaurants, these beautiful resorts. So that was really why I chose hospitality as a career.
Brilliant. And I suppose following on from hotel school you started with.
Yeah.
And then what was your kind of first entry-level job, first experience working in a hotel operationally?
First job was while I was going to hotel school, and I worked at the Bartrude's Palace Hotel in St. Moritz, Switzerland, which was probably the number one leading hotel in Europe. I remember my first day of work, I was 18, and on my 18th birthday, I was assigned to scrape all the windows clean in the main dining room because it was a seasonal hotel. And I think that was sort of a good start to my career because, the rest of my career would be holidays, you'd be working. When everyone else is off, you'd be working. And look, it didn't bother me, but it was a fun experience, and it was a great hotel to work for.
No, listen, I think anyone who's been through hotel school and starting at the scratch, I think that empathy you have as you go into managerial roles, because you've done all, I suppose, the hard graft jobs along the way. You're now obviously working in an international golf club and you have an incredible array of experience across the world in that. But can you bring us back to, I suppose, maybe your first managerial level role in a hotel? Talk to us about that. What was that experience like? And then that transitionary moment from running a hotel to looking at a golf establishment.
Yeah, so I would say my first proper management role in hotels was food and beverage manager. I was seconded to Indonesia. At the time I was working in Hong Kong. And I was young, I was aggressive, and I basically told corporate, I need to move on, I want to be a manager. And within 2 days I was sent to Indonesia. So I got what I asked for. And I was sort of, thrown in the deep end. But it was a great learning curve. And really from there, my career took off. And I spent the next 4 or 5 years as F&B manager, traveling around Asia with the same group. Finally returned to Hong Kong, managed a huge airport hotel, 12 outlets, 280 staff. And at the end of that, we were transitioning to another airport, so it became a city hotel. And all of a sudden, somebody asked me, actually my brother asked me, why didn't you go into the golf club industry? And I thought, well, I'm a hotelier. Why would I do that? Clubs are for retired people to manage. But anyway, I went for an interview. The GM at the time was an ex-hotel guy as well. Had actually worked from executive chef all the way up to GM's level in a club. So really that conversation with him, an interview which I thought would be half an hour became a 2-hour interview. And he basically persuaded me to give it a try, right? And he said, look, basically, you're running a golf club. It's almost like running a hotel, but without the rooms. And I thought that sounded interesting. I need someone strong in F&B, somebody who knows golf. I was fortunate. I played national level golf, so I knew the golf industry in Hong Kong from being a member at another club, during my youth. So I took the plunge. I didn't know what to expect. I thought I can get out after a couple of years if I don't like it. And I stayed in that job 12 years as club manager. So that was really the beginning.
And what were the kind of like major differences you would say between running a hotel, running a golf club?
Obviously, golf clubs generally don't have rooms, so there wasn't the rooms element. From a structure and a board level, all of a sudden I was reporting to a committee. So I was reporting to, senior professionals, but in industries outside hospitality or golf. Whereas in hotels, you're obviously dealing with hotel professionals through and through. So I knew what that was, but it was a total change in my mindset of having to take instruction and dealing with doctors, lawyers, contractors, and all that. So that was one difference. I think the biggest difference was really, clubs is like a hotel where they check in and they never check out again. So all of a sudden your guests are there every single day of the week, year after year, sometimes generations of families who have been members. Kids have grown up, they become adults, they bring in their own families. So that was really it. And personally, I loved it because it was an opportunity really to get to know my customers and my guests, right? And I really embrace that. I think often in hotels, customers check in, they check out a couple of days, maybe a week. Occasionally you have long stay guests. And for some people, they like that. I like to deal with customers who are quick in and quick out. And I don't want to deal with people who are going to be there forever. So that was the biggest difference, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine with, when I worked in hotels, you'd have a difficult guest. At least you knew their checkout date.
Exactly, right?
With a golf club, it might be slightly different.
It was very, very different. So you would actually have to flip it and say, okay, I need to deal with this person, get them on my side, and basically make them my best friend. And I quickly learned that skill set. And otherwise, I wouldn't have stayed 12 years.
I suppose hospitality in its nature is about service, right? It's individuals come in, they're home away from home, and it's about giving them great service. Obviously, me coming from being an Irish guy and growing up in Ireland, working in hotels, we're pretty well known for our hospitality.
Yeah.
You've worked in two great regions and lived for a considerable amount of time, one being Asia and one being the Middle East. If you were to kind of look at both regions and both have kind of nuanced ways of hospitality, what would you say are the major differences between working in Asia in hospitality and then working here, obviously in Dubai, which is kind of the center point of the Middle East?
Yeah. So, look, I think both regions are very high level service. It is the home of hospitality in a sense for 5-star luxury experiences. So that's quite similar in many ways. You'd have the best hotels, the biggest, the highest standards. The key difference really when you work in Asia, you're working with primarily a local workforce. So there might be a few expats, but 98% of all your colleagues will be local, whether they're Indonesian or in the Philippines or Filipino, etc. Coming to this part of the world is a much more international workforce. 99% of the colleagues you work with are expats in a sense. So it's a much more transient environment. You see people come and go. People are obviously here to develop their career. They left their country for a better future. Whereas in Asia, you tend to find your staff will stay often for their entire career in one property, right? That might be less so now with younger people being more keen to develop their career quickly. But that would be two of the differences. So, Dubai, you need to be much more sensitive to many different cultures, dealing with people from all over Asia, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe. And really as a GM, I suppose, your role then is to manage your teams and those cultural differences. Whereas in Asia, you're really the odd one out. You have to adapt to the local way of doing things.
Interesting, yeah. And when it comes to this phenomenal property that we're in here, it's a Trump property, Trump International Golf Club. Trump as a brand, obviously globally, has many great hotels, casinos, etc. What would you say are like the standards that when someone comes to a Trump property, even though it doesn't have hotel rooms, what are the standards they'd expect to see and receive?
Yeah, so it's all about golf with Trump, and I think the Trump reputation worldwide is for some of the best golf courses in the world. All the golf courses are signature designs. In this golf course in particular, Gil Hands, who's probably the number one or number two golf course architect. So really, people come to a Trump Golf knowing the golf course is going to be immaculate, it's going to be well groomed, the standard will be there all year round. Apart from that, obviously all the services that support, from the golf services, from your arrival, we have complimentary valet services. That's a standard for Trump all over the world. You won't find that any other golf club in the UAE. And then all the services from dropping your bag to being delivered onto your golf buggy. All the equipment you see around the golf club is brand new. We maintain at a very, very high standard. And then high-tech facilities. We have a great TrackMan range. So we're always looking at pushing the boundary. What can we do that other clubs don't have? And also something that complements the golf industry. But if you ask any person visiting a Trump golf club, people who've played here, who have visited other Trump golf courses, the golf courses are always unbelievable.
Casper, I wanted to kind of move on to hospitality as a career. If you look at both of us, for example, you're now running one of the world's best golf clubs. I myself am in the technology side of hotels. And I think maybe a lot of younger people coming into the industry might see it as just a purely service-based job where they look at the front of house roles. But as a career, I'm pretty passionate about educating younger people on the breadth of opportunities, both like geographically around the world that you can work, but also as a day-to-day role. Yeah. Kind of what would if you were speaking to your younger self, what would you be saying to that person about hospitality as a career?
Well, obviously, I think it's a great career. I think from the time I went to hotel school, it was all about hotels. Leisure was never a consideration. Golf was never a consideration. Other technologies or, as what you're doing was never considered. So from my own experience, falling into golf by accident, I tell young people to try to take as broad a view as possible. Try not to specialize in any particular area. The more experiences you can get, the better. Young people wanting to start in golf, unless they're coming through a PGA background, I would always tell them, look, go through the hotel industry, because I think the foundation of hotel schools and the hospitality works for any leisure industry. But get that solid base first. So I would always tell young people, start in the hotels, because you can travel a lot more. There's obviously a lot more hotels worldwide than there are golf clubs. So take that avenue and then self-educate. Don't limit yourself. Say, I only want to do F&B. I only want to do rooms division. I only want to do leisure. Try to do everything, because it takes time to figure out what's your true passion, right? I started in rooms division because that was the placement I got. I then moved into F&B because I thought that's where my passion was. And then I ended up in golf, right? But everything I learned from rooms division through F&B has really helped me in this industry. Obviously, my golfing background adds to that. And then there's so many professional educations that you can take during your career. So anybody coming from hospitality into clubs, I would say pursue your club management designation. So you have the Club Management Association of Europe, you have the Club Management Association of America, which is probably the only real club management degree you can take. There are universities in the States where you can just study club management. But take that, because it gives you that educational foundation to complement your background, whether it's just leisure or just hotels. And you see a lot more young people doing it now. It's a lot more accessible. You can do it online. You can also travel to Europe. They do it all over Europe now. In my day, it was hotels or nothing, right? If you didn't have a hospitality degree, you're not going into hotels or hospitality. So that's what I would recommend young people. Be open-minded, try as many different things, as many different departments. Try the club industry. Do it for a couple of years. You can always go back. Or maybe do a hotel with a golf course attached to it so that you can cross learn. But you need the passion. You have to be willing to push yourself and say, look, I want to spend time outside work to do a bit of golf. And if you do well, that might be an avenue for you to pursue as well.
And then from a geographical perspective, when you look at, all the countries you've visited and worked in, I always call it's like the career that gives you the passport to the world, I suppose.
Yeah.
Would you echo that and kind of give a few places that you've had the pleasure of traveling, working, visiting through this career?
No, absolutely. So obviously I worked in Switzerland quite a bit early on in my career, and then moved to Asia because my heart was in Asia, but it was also sort of the growth of hospitality at the time. And I joined a company. It was a 4-star company at the time, but they were recruiting a lot of young people. And I knew for me that was the avenue to go up through management quickly. And like I told you earlier, I was transferred with 2 days notice. I was then transferred again, probably with 2 days notice. But I was young, I was single, I was willing. And I was F&B manager at the age of 24, 25 already, which you wouldn't do if you went through the sort of traditional route. So I would tell people, go to the developing areas of the world. Asia is still a part of that. I guess Eastern Europe, Middle East still has big opportunities. And be willing to take on extra responsibility. Don't be afraid to take that big promotion because you may feel you're not ready. Sometimes you have to jump in the deep end.
And I suppose in those developing worlds, you probably get the opportunity to potentially get that managerial role maybe slightly earlier if you're a very ambitious younger person, maybe similar to yourself when you got the call to ship up and go off to Indonesia.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're willing to do it, you're obviously marked as somebody who's transferable and willing to move. Golf clubs, I would say, are a lot more stable. You tend to stay longer. I mean, I did my first job 12 years, and I also thought now it's time to move on. But, build a track record. Get a couple of years under your belt in each destination if you can, unless you're being moved with the same group. But don't jump around. And I think you'll see a lot of young people skip jobs every 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. It's not great. You don't build up a portfolio or a track record or an experience. You never see something from the beginning through till the end.
That's a good point. And just before we move into the quick fire round, on that, I think one of the things that I've noticed speaking to many people in the industry is the lack of retention they're getting around people within hospitality as a career. I think separately, more industry-wide, you've got younger people who maybe are moving more rapidly than ever before. But as a retention tool, how do you think the industry can improve in retaining staff across both, the hotel space and, I'm not sure if it directly impacts golf resorts as well, but, as an industry, retention's really, really difficult at the moment.
Yeah. Look, it's always difficult in a transient place like this. So, the first step, and I think everyone does this, is identifying, high potential staff that you want to invest in. Invest in those people, guide them. We obviously guide a lot of our young, talented people to pursue the club manager designation, even from a young position, say supervisory position. And then we try very hard to guide them. If they do want to leave, let's try to guide them to another Trump facility, right? Be it in the UK or in America and all that. But we also need to realize that sometimes it's just not possible. So I think it's about building good relationships with those people. They may leave, but they may be able to rejoin when you have an opening. So you can't take a short-term view on this, just 1, 2, 3 years. How about 5 or 10 years? And I think some companies are good at that. They bring, I meet people who've worked 3 times for the same company. They've left, they've gotten new experiences, and that really is a value when they come back, that they've broadened their experience base. I think better education, more career days, hospitality, maybe bringing in other leisure industries. Invite golf people to talk at hotel schools. and introduce our industry, so that it sort of gives people a bigger option, and they're a little bit better prepared what's out there, and maybe they can choose a bit more carefully. But you need to be honest, you need to be upfront with your teams, what the career opportunities are. We're very straightforward with the teams. If there is no opportunity, if they're keen to move on, we always encourage them. If you can get a better opportunity, go for it. But what's your short, medium-term goal? Are you going to benefit from joining a different company, or is it better to stay here and get that solid foundation? So it's not an easy one to deal with. I think Dubai, because it's so transient, it's so competitive. The rest of the GCC is opening up, growing. Look at Saudi. They're attracting a lot of talent here, and a lot of your junior talent, they follow the money. And we have to accept that.
Yeah, and listen, it's been obviously a difficult year as well with COVID across the world with hospitality, where people maybe had the time to go and find other roles. So yeah, but Casper, listen, really, really enjoyed this. Going to move into a quick fire before we catch up, and hopefully we get a round of golf in the coming weeks
ready.
in this beautiful resort. So, hotels or golf resorts?
Golf resorts.
Back nine or front nine?
Back nine.
In terms of a holiday, city break or beach resort?
Beach resort.
In their prime, Jack Nicklaus or Tiger Woods?
Tiger Woods.
Brilliant. Casper, listen, love this. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.